The other day, I was chatting with a friend about what tracks we'd like to see return in a DLC pack for Mario Kart World. Of course, me being me, I brought up one of my more forgotten favorites, Banshee Boardwalk. My friend agreed that it should be in, saying that the track was beyond overdue and would fit pretty well into this game. Considering the edge of the boardwalk is often gated off by some small guardrails, it seems like it could be a seamless fit into Mario Kart World with its new rail grinding mechanics. I found myself getting kind of excited about the idea actually. But then it occurred to me, where actually is this track located? How do you drive up to it? Because in the world of modern Mario Kart, these are suddenly relevant questions. For example, I think we can all agree that Toad's Factory was an excellent fit into this game. But it wasn't just the fact that it was overdue after a seemingly mysterious absence in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, it was that it fits the scope of what Mario Kart World wants to be. The track is shown to be where they manufacture item boxes, and of course these item boxes frequently rain in all throughout the world. I'm no single player game expert, but this feels like a case of cohesion or something. This is not to say a track being overdue no longer matters, of course, but there's just an extra requirement for a track making sense in this game. It's got to fit a theme, it's got to have some interesting ways to navigate the interior too, even if those parts are out of bounds in a race. There needs to be some fun places to hide some new panels to search for in free roam. This is the expectation for any new Mario Kart World track. That said, Mario Kart World is going to get DLC, right? Right? Well, every other recently released multiplayer Nintendo game would suggest that this should be the case. We don't really live in a world where games are completed at launch anymore, so perhaps paid DLC isn't even the concept I'm looking for necessarily. We could just get some free content updates. And already, there are some serious rumors out there about certain voice actors involved in Donkey Kong Bonanza being found in the credits of Mario Kart World for seemingly no reason. Of course, that doesn't actually confirm anything, but it is an interesting thing to ponder. Now, back when Mario Kart 8 launched, it took about 3 months before downloadable content was announced. The eventual DLC packs would include new courses and characters, and don't look now, but there's a direct tomorrow and the game has been out for 3 months, so given how dependent the Switch 2 has been on Mario Kart World in the early months to push sales numbers on top of it all, I feel like if there's going to be something, we're probably pretty close to finding out. And what exactly that might be is a question that has kind of tricked me for a few months at this point, for the reasons already detailed. Because when doing some deeper thinking, I actually question if potential DLC here would look anything like what we got with Mario Kart 8's first 2 DLC packs, and there are a few reasons why this is the case. Beyond just the world aspect of it all, I've noticed a few patterns of the track so far. 1. There are 0 original tracks from Super Circuit and Mario Kart 8. With Super Circuit, this feels coincidental, as the base games have always shied away from taking many courses from this game, and we just had plenty in the Booster Pass. But this has been the exact opposite case when it comes to the prior game in the series, which historically has always had many tracks returning immediately. The decision to add 0 Wii U tracks here feels incredibly deliberate. Perhaps it's due to how long Mario Kart 8 was out after all. Maybe this is something that won't matter for DLC though. But it could also just be that there were difficulties with implementing anti-gravity sections. 2. Nearly every retro track that made the game's 30-track roster does not have a remix that plays in free roam. On the other hand, a large majority of the tracks in the series got free roam remixes, so this feels like a notable contrast and perhaps a deliberate decision. This feels likely considering how out of their way they went to not recycle track songs in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Only 2 tracks of 96 in that game share the same song, which falls way short of the expected tally had the tracks selected for the Booster Pass been completely random. World ended up having one double remix exception too when it comes to free roam and the tracks themselves, that being SNES Koopa Beach, and I think I have an explanation as to why. This is because SNES tracks were kind of treated differently in this game to begin with. Most track types from that game, such as the Choco Islands, the Ghost Valleys, alongside Vanilla Lake and Koopa Beach 1, they're all playable in free roam, and it kind of makes sense for their themes to be available in free roam as such, even if they frequently aren't playing in sync like when you're there. It'd be like adding Waluigi Pinball to a game without Waluigi or something. Not that that's ever happened before, of course. But Koopa Beach 2 just happening to be one of the 30 main courses on top of Koopa Beach 1 existing in the world kind of feels like an exception case that not even the SNES Mario circuits can claim, as Mario Circuit 4 is still trapped in purgatory. 3. Almost every track in this game takes place in an outdoor space. Boo Cinema feels like the major exception, and of course Toad's Factory and Bowser's Castle have bits where you go inside, but I guess what I'm saying here is, this is likely all because we have to drive up to these tracks. Tracks with indoor aspects to them cannot be completely indoors, so ideas like Waluigi Pinball or Ribbon Road, tracks where you seem to shrink down or are enclosed in some specific space, feel like they aren't super eligible for this game. It would just break the immersion. Speaking of which, world immersion can definitely be seen in other ways too. To some, it might be surprising that Mario Circuit of this game is just a bunch of old ones put together, but to me it kind of makes sense. They were never going to choose a more recent one to return here, or make a new one in the same vein as Mario Kart 7 and 8's Mario Circuit, because all these recent Mario Circuit tracks have Peach's Castle located somewhere in the vicinity. Their presence would throw the world off, because Peach's Castle is just part of Peach Stadium now, and it just doesn't make sense for there to be two Peach Castles in a singular world. I think the same might go for Bowser's Castle as well, even though he seems more prone to having multiple fortresses, but this is definitely a factor worth considering. Immersion matters, and it's why I don't think you could ever justify having something like a tour city in this game, considering they have, well, a real-life location already that is most certainly not right next to Airship Fortress. So with all of these factors considered, I set out to make a list of tracks that would make sense to return as DLC. It should be noted that before this game came out, I wasn't even sure they would continue doing retro courses to begin with, given how many we just received in the booster pass. But World released with plenty of them still, and solidified that they are likely here to stay. It's just, the thing is, with all patterns considered now, I can't help but feel that retro tracks as a whole almost feel nonsensical for any DLC packs. So let's get into it. My original DLC theories for this game stemmed directly from the lack of free roam remixes for only a handful of tracks in the series, because I felt that perhaps the omissions were because they were saving some space for actual racetrack remixes. Again, this would be a match of the actual 30 tracks in the game, where only one of them actually has a free roam remix. But what I got for the final list of tracks that have no remix is kind of a mixed bag. To my knowledge, here's the complete list. If we are just looking at specifically Mario-themed tracks here, as in no Hyrule Circuit or no real-world nonsense, this gives us about 21 options to work with. But considering I doubt that they'd bring back both Boo Lake and Broken Pier, for instance, this would actually result in just 18 options, which is technically enough to do some DLC packs, or to even double the game if a new continent was formed or something. But when further evaluating the actual list of 18, it's not something that is really a logical set of tracks. I mean, there's 4 Bowser's Castles to start, and under the assumption that at most they're only going to select one to have on a different continent, that cuts down our options to 15 retro tracks. But that's not the only overlapping theme too, because Banshee Boardwalk and Broken Pier both serve roughly the same purpose in their original games. And while one could argue that the world structure makes sense to have multiple spooky tracks in close proximity, I don't think they would have gone with 2 boardwalks. DK Pass and Starview Peak work together, DK Pass and DK Summit probably don't though. So eliminating just one would bring our list down to 14. On top of this all though, there's a lot of tracks on this list that they literally just opted to bring back into the booster pass for A Deluxe. To me, rather than this being some grand scheme, I think what's more likely is they probably just did not feel like redoing all of these songs again, and perhaps that also explains why they chose only a handful of Bowser Castle themes to do too. The repetitiveness involved in making a bunch of Bowser's Castle remixes is probably why we had 4 left unused on our track list. I know they did bring back a few Mario Kart 8 retro tracks, but the number I think was uncoincidentally low. Mario Kart 8 ended with way more retro tracks than the other games, yet Mario Kart Wii and Mario Kart 7 seemingly had just as many of their retro courses brought back as 8. So do I think they're planning on bringing back Boo Lake, Sky Garden, Sunset Wild, Snowland, Waluigi Stadium, and Koopa Cape again? Probably not. So this leaves us with a possible list of roughly 10 options. And even still, the remaining courses have a lot of questions. Mario Kart Stadium already feels like a stretch to say that they didn't remix to begin with, given they remixed Wii U Mario Circuit, which is similar, and Battle Stadium in the game as well. And it would also overlap heavily in theming with Peach Stadium 2 in my mind. How could Piranha Plant Cove's tall waters even work with Mario Kart World's water mechanics? I don't really think it can. How do you expect Cheep Cheep Lagoon's Go Dive Go section to work when you cannot really dive in this game? Would there be any excitement to begin with if they brought Cheep Cheep Lagoon back? Do the Woohoo tracks even really make sense? I mean, maybe if you have to fly over to them, I guess, but it feels like a stretch to attach them to whatever world they're building for this game's DLC. They too kind of just feel like crossover tracks. Neo Bowser City would be distinct and cool with its theming, I think, but would they want to do another Mario Kart 8 DLC retro, even if it wasn't a recent release? I'm not sure. And as much as I love Wario Coliseum, they've brought back 14 retro tracks to this point already, and 2 of them are Wario themed. And it would probably just be pretty similar in design to Wario Stadium. So the list gets really small when you start asking questions like this. And that's assuming they're on board with Bowser having multiple castles, but again, I guess that debatably can fit his character. What this exercise tells me though, is they probably should have added Yoshi's Island and Lakeside Park to this game. Both of them feel like slam dunk picks actually. You could just drop Yoshi's Island off on the coast somewhere, and maybe have a cannon or two that launches you over there, and Lakeside Park fits maybe the last theming not excessively hit upon, which is just like a volcano type of level. Crumble volcanoes' crumbly nature makes it kind of a tough sell in a world setting like this, and I feel like this could have been a nice complement to Drybone's Burnout that already kind of covers the lava level slot as is. Adding both of these courses though would have bumped the track total up to the natural 32 of the series, hitting the standard 16 retro tracks while supplying a GBA course and a Yoshi track to the game that are relatively fitting for the goal of the world in my mind. But this got me thinking though, if there's so many questions about good retro track fits to me, how many good fits are actually out there when including the courses that have already had their themes remixed in free roam? How many potential courses could truly bring something new to the table? Well, I went ahead and did some stuff in Excel, and what I found was that I was surprised at just how many former tracks could technically be classified in a similar way to a track that already exists in Mario Kart World. Now, disclaimer, but some of these categories could definitely include some overlap, and there are tracks out there that could fit multiple categories. The point of this exercise, though, is really just to show how well World has covered most possible retro track themes out there. Starting off, most games have 2 circuit tracks in one way or another. Typically, you have your basic circuits, commonly found to be the first track in the game. Then there's a second, more advanced circuit track, usually taking place around Peach's castle. Many would argue that Mario Bros. Circuit is the Circuit 1 of this game, and I'm not going to argue with you on that. But for the sake of this exercise, I'm just going to say that I found Mario Circuit to be the more fitting basic circuit, and Peach Stadium to be more fitting of your typical castle circuit level. Mario Kart Stadium, while the predecessor of Mario Bros. Circuit, thematically fits what Peach Stadium has going, and of course Peach Gardens is not a circuit track and probably looks very out of place here, but I struggled to find its other comparison here. And again, I don't think that they're going to roll with it, because I don't think that they're going to want to have 2 Peach castles in the same world, different continents or not. It's also worth noting that Crown City is also much more of a city than it is a highway. That said, I think highway courses feel taken care of in a game that has plenty of them in free roam, knockout, and intermission tracks. It would almost feel like thematic overkill, like when they added Moonview Highway to the booster pass on top of like 14 other city tracks. These new categories now on screen are the ones that had a little bit less overlap in my opinion. Of course, you could throw Calamari Desert back in the desert section, and Luigi's Mansion can be put in the Ghost House section, but I'll come back to those in a bit. Each water track definitely has a different flavor, I'll admit that, so technically courses like Cuba Cape and Cheep Cheep Lagoon could make sense along Wario Shipyard as mentioned, but there is watercourse representation already here for sure. This includes Cheep Cheep Falls, which I wasn't sure what to do with at first. Initially I included Yoshi Falls and Shy Guy Falls alongside it, but determined that all of them have different enough vibes to fit into other categories, so here I paired it with Ninja Hideaway, which also has many Japanese influences, and Dragon Driftway, which has Chinese theming. I struggled fitting Driftway and Hideaway into other categories compared to the Falls levels, so yeah, this is kind of just an East Asian kind of theming category. On the flip side, I gave Mario Bros. Circuit some Western labeling. It definitely has that Radiator Springs, Arizona kind of vibe, and coincidentally, it's found in the southwestern portion of World's map, in spite of it being the first track in the game. I placed Sunset Wilds in the original Yoshi Valley kind of in the same category. Whistle Stop Summit also takes place in this general area, and of course, as the spiritual successor to Calamari Desert, I felt it would be proper to pair them together, and this turned into kind of a station category, which also includes Sunshine Airport and Super Bell Subway, a different kind of train track. And while Lakeside Park might not be the best lava/volcano pick, and you could definitely place it elsewhere perhaps, it does share some properties of Crumble Volcano, and regardless where you want to put the flat Bowser Castle levels, the point stands. Each game typically has a course from my lava category, and one from my main castle category. And Rainbow Road, well, that should of course be straightforward. Perhaps the weirdest one to classify on this list is Dandelion Depths. I kind of wanted to leave it in Mushroom Gorge as like a cavern type of level, but Choco Mountain also didn't quite feel fitting as a mountain category, so this is kind of just your general nature themed category, whether that's including caves, mountains, or in the case of Rock Mountain, both. And part of me wanted to include Shy Guy Falls here, feeling that maybe this was the best fit with no falls category, but in the end, I went with an odd industrial and mine category. HDRookie did back this idea up, so I feel comfortable letting this one stay. And then finally, there's a few one-to-one connections, I'd argue. Faraway Oasis is a spiritual successor to Riverside Park, undoubtedly, and all it takes is one look at the minimap to see that. Weirdly though, I don't think Lakeside fits super well into this category, so that's kind of why I left it in the lava one. Great Question Block Ruins I felt was kind of another sky level like Airship Fortress, just different flavor, but ultimately I just linked it up with Swamp Ruins as just a Ruins track. Shy Guy Bazaar is definitely a different type of market than Coconut Mall when it comes to the setting too, but technically there is a match to be had there, as Bazaar clearly isn't the standard desert level of this game. With that said, I feel like Coconut Mall would be an excellent kind of largely indoor track to have in this world too. It feels like a decent candidate still, given that Bazaar isn't a super strong match, they just kind of have some similarities. Speaking of which though, Toad's Factory is kind of an indoor stage too. It is kind of off in its own category as some kind of mechanical themed track. I suppose TikTok Clock is kind of similar with its moving gears and levers, but that one I'd perhaps classify as incompatible, alongside Ribbon Road, Squeaky Clean Sprint, Waluigi Pinball, Music Park, and Electrodrome. I don't know how you would enter and exit these courses as it stands in World, or shrink down in the case of many of them. Maybe the music-themed ones could still work, but considering all these tracks were in A Deluxe anyway, I'm not sure they are worth the hassle. It's also clear to me that Nintendo really wants these tracks to stand out from far away. This is something they've stressed multiple times over when talking about the world design of Breath of the Wild. And I think the reason why they got away with Boo Cinema being mainly an indoors track is just that you can see the massive manor off in the distance. This makes an idea like Electrodrome or even Super Bell Subway something that'd be underground, something that feels harder to justify, because even if you could drive in, it might be a little bit difficult to see the true theme of the track from a nearby cliff top. The final category I have is DK Spaceport, which I am just calling a reference track. This is because the track is a giant callback to the Donkey Kong arcade game and doesn't really fit any other biome. Now, reference levels could span many different biomes and really call anything into its category. Delfino Square could have been included technically. The ones I put here are just like straight up references to a game at large, as opposed to individual levels. Piranha Plant Slide is weird in this regard as it fits multiple levels to the point where it's hard to fit it into one biome because on one hand it's underground, but on the other hand it's, overworld. But when matching those together, it kind of just feels like the makeup of Super Mario Bros., so I felt like it was best fitting here. So after going through all 30 track themes and eliminating a few courses that we feel might just not work in general in Mario Kart World, I have just 2 remaining tracks that feel truly distinct from what they've already really covered. One is Baby Park, and the other is Piranha Plant Pipeline. 2 pretty unique and infamous courses for their own personal reasons, I'd say, and while that might make them good ideas for DLC perhaps, I've got to say, this whole exercise has just left me with more questions than answers. This of course isn't to say that there can't be like 2 winter levels or 2 beach courses. We've of course seen that already in this game and they've made it work. It's just when I'm thinking about ways for them to knock our socks off in like a direct or something, I'm struggling for this reason. Yes, they could make a bunch of new innovative tracks, they could rehash some ideas in the process. Just the idea of a new continent as a DLC map feels like it would just be incredibly underwhelming. I don't understand how they could build a new continent that doesn't just feel like a cheap knockoff or a rehash of the one that we just got upon release. And for that reason, I truly hesitate to say with confidence that a bunch of DLC tracks are on the way. It is possible that they do a bunch of great new tracks, perhaps that's even more possible than adding more retro tracks, but it does not feel as the original world left a lot of space for thematic innovation, and perhaps this is why the true track count in the original game was relatively low to begin with. To Nintendo, perhaps they just saw an already solved puzzle. Now, I am aware that this take could blow up in my face and quickly at that, and that is a risk I am willing to take. I do enjoy trying to think like a dev, and I think it makes for fun, thought-engaging content, and when looking back, I found that my track record of predictions have aged better than not, really, and it makes the true surprises that caught me off guard all the better. Truly, I hope I am wrong here, because I want more tracks to be added as DLC. As of now, I'm just a little bit skeptical on how exactly they would pull it off, without cheapening the vision that they've seemingly committed to with this new game to begin with. And this lack of flexibility really makes me question, what comes after Mario Kart World? We seem to get Mario Kart names in pairs, Super Circuit and Double Dash, DS and Wii, 7 and 8. Are we getting a Mario Kart universe next? And it's an almost scary thought, because doing something similar would perhaps limit the potential content for a second game in a row. But hey, perhaps they could add more to the game than just races if they were to do it again, and turn the world into something that actually incentivizes exploration of it. World as it stands relies on its players to be inherently interested in what it has to offer, but I'm sure some people might care more if their favorite characters could be found and challenged somewhere on the map, as opposed to just being some kind of gacha unlock. That being said, it's not that they can't make a second continent in the current Mario Kart world, or that crossover courses can't happen. I'm not saying that they can't make a DK Bonanza theme pack either. Just keep in mind, 2 of the 30 tracks are already Donkey Kong themed, and they went out of their way to keep this game as Mario focused as possible. If my track eligibility requirements were accurate in any way up to this point though, it was definitely in stating that tour cities and crossover tracks would seemingly be off the table, and the fact that they remixed all the original Mario Kart 8 DLC track themes outside of the crossover tracks like Hyrule Circuit and Big Blue feels telling. So when it comes to track reveals, I would just temper the expectations a little bit because it's better to be pleasantly surprised than it is to be disappointed. So what do I think Nintendo should do? Well, aside from fixing worldwides, adding splits to time trials, and being able to group search for a worldwide race or knockout with your friends, or even do P-switches alongside them, give us more options. Let us tinker with the point system, give us more item settings, give us more team customization, give us a real battle mode again. Why remove what actually worked in Deluxe? And of course, adding new characters hurts nobody. So bring King K. Rool and all the fan favorites over, I say. Also, how about some more knockout tours? And I'm not talking like 8 new ones, I'm talking like 40 new ones. There should be almost infinite layouts possible, and if anything, I feel like we should be able to create our own. But let me know what you all think though. I look forward to reading all of your This Aged Poorly comments tomorrow, so I'll see you all then.